Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. So, what do you got for us today, Claire?
Today, I'm going to pick on Mississippi again, in particular, Vicksburg in the 1990s. Now, I'm going to start off by just introducing you to Melanie Dawn McKay. She's going to have a normal childhood, grow up, graduate from high school, go to junior college, then start working with the Divine Guidance Christian School before she gets married at 22 years old. Then she becomes Melanie Straughter in 1985. Eventually, her and her husband will have 2 kids together before they go their separate ways. Now, Melanie will do the best she can for her kids. She's active in the community, all that. Real great person. So that's just the background on her to bring you to the time period we're talking about.
Is she our victim?
Shh. So we're going to start with a couple, Melanie Straughter and Prentiss Coleman III, who have been dating roughly... What?
Your case, the last case you did was Michael Coleman.
Yeah, so I've stumbled on this one, researching that one, and it confused me at first because when they were just referencing a Coleman, I had thought it was to my case I did last week, but it wasn't. And then since I stumbled on this one, I was like, I'll do this one next week. I didn't think you'd remember it.
Turns out I got me a notebook here because you done told me sometimes I might need it. And I got Michael Coleman as the last person I done wrote down.
Well, I'm going to take it. By me making you do notes, I've improved your memory. You're welcome.
You haven't. I got to write it down. But you got something against people named Coleman, apparently.
No, so again, I told you when I was doing the research on Michael Coleman, this case popped up because it happened to be a Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, unrelated.
Picking on Mississippi.
Oh, the other one wasn't in Mississippi. Well, yeah, it was, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, that would make sense.
My notes make
Shoot, I don't remember either. You didn't take very detailed notes, evidently. Look, lady, I take notes for a reason. Otherwise, they'll all smush together. I don't think it was Mississippi. I thought it was Tennessee, but I do have in my notes that I'm picking on Mississippi again, which makes me think it was indeed Mississippi. But that's not even about that case. Get off of it. We're talking about Melanie and Prentiss.
I thought she was married to somebody else.
I done told you they went their separate ways, so now...
Who's got the kids?
It's split custody. Anyway, so that's what this story is about. Melanie Straughter and Prentiss Coleman III, who've been dating about 2 years. Now, Prentiss is 29/30 when we're talking about them, and Melanie is 28/30 during this period.
She ages 2 years and he ages 1?
2 years.
You said 29/30.
I said 29/31.
Uh-huh.
So, because it's from the time they start dating to the point we're talking. So they were 29 and she was 28.
Late 20s. Got it.
God dang it, Andrea. You're ruining the story and we haven't even begun.
You're the one who can't get off their age. I said late 20s. Got it. Move on.
Anyway, they'll date for like 2 years. It's a toxic relationship that would result in numerous instances of assault and abuse. Now, Melanie... God dang it. Look, you ruined this story so much you got me off track. Fuck, Andrea. So they were dating 2 years. Prentiss would move in with Melanie in her apartment and her 2 young children. Now, at some point, I don't know if it was after he moved in. I don't know how long they lived together, so don't ask me any stupid questions.
Since you just said that, I was going to point out, so she does have the kids.
Anyway... I would assume the relationship started to go bad after he moved in, because I don't know exactly why you would move somebody in if the relationship was a shitty one to begin with.
Because you honestly believe that the person loves you and they're going to change and blah, 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 blah. But in reality, if somebody puts their hands on you, you should exit the relationship. Because it ain't gonna change. One time is one time too many. But anyway, continue.
So again, it would develop into a toxic relationship that would result in numerous instances of assaults and abuse. Now, eventually, Melanie would decide exactly how you said, just she'd have enough of it, and let Prentiss know that he's gonna have to go. Now, this is November 1994. He packs up some of his things and leaves. But Prentiss wasn't ready to give up on Melanie, nor did it seem that he wanted to give up on smacking her around either. So he would take up stalking her in his free time. From November to December, Prentiss would pick up several more charges to include 2 counts of simple assaults, malicious mischief, and trespassing.
On her or just other people, do you know?
On her.
Okay.
Now, at this point, Melanie has developed a fear of Prentiss popping up anywhere in her life because,
Valid fear. Yep.
again, he's stalking her.
It's very valid.
Her mom, other family members, even Melanie's work supervisor would let her stay with them and would also go with her to places so she wasn't by herself. Her supervisor would even head to her house to feed her dogs in the afternoons with her so she wasn't alone then either because, again, he pops up, they get into an argument, he's hitting her. Like, I feel bad for her because she was, by the way, through all of this, making complaints to the police department. And I don't know if it's a case of if he wasn't there when the police showed up, they're not going to hunt him down because it's just like the feuding thing.
Right. Stupid.
And not only that, but even when he was getting those charges through November and December, it didn't seem to deter him at all. Now, the maintenance feller at her apartment, Charles Jones, was also aware of the situation and would be more than willing to change the locks on her place for her. He also agrees to follow her from work to pick up her children and head home. Now, Melanie's fear would drive her to purchase a .25 caliber pistol, which Mr. Jones was also more than happy to show her how to use it, all while hoping she would not need it. Now, again, Mr. Jones, super nice maintenance feller, would also randomly just swing by or drive by Melanie's house just to make sure she made it home okay or that everything at the house seems okay. Because, mind you, when he was living there, I'm sure it was a routine thing for the police to show up because that's what this relationship was doing.
Yeah, that's what they were doing.
So on one of his random checks, he would drive by her house when he hears a ton of screaming and calls the police on his cell phone. He could see from his vehicle that the door had been ripped open and Prentiss was standing there with a piece of the door casing in his hand where it had ripped off when he kicked it in. After that, Melanie would get in a habit of calling Mr. Jones whenever she was fearful of Prentiss. Now, this brings us to December 14th.
No. What happened with that? They didn't do anything?
Again, he's just getting, like, trespassing charges, mischief charges, like... Anyway, so that'll bring us to December 14th. Prentiss would ask for a police escort to Melanie's home so that he could retrieve the rest of his belongings. I thought that this was like the silver lining of hope. He's realizing all the stalking isn't wooing her back to him. Apparently, the way to a woman's heart isn't kicking in the door.
Oh, man. I'm just now learning that. I might have to teach that to my boys.
So the police would meet him over there and watch him as he removed 2 truckloads worth of belongings from Melanie's house. One weird item the detective noticed, or not detective, but the police officer noticed, was an axe that came out of the kitchen, claiming that was his. Now, 4 days later, December 18th, Melanie's neighbor of more than 2 years, Angela Tillman, would see Prentiss lurking around Melanie's home. So Angela would call the Vicksburg PD, who told Angela to keep a watch for Melanie to come home and to not let Melanie enter her home alone, but just give him a call back when she sees him and they'll escort her into her house. Because that's one of those, they can't really do anything about Prentiss just being there because Melanie's not.
But I thought a restraining order was more like stay away from this person's address, their home, because you don't know when they're there. So you're just supposed to avoid those areas altogether.
Look, I'm just telling you what the police officer told Melanie, that just keep an eye out for Melanie. Andrea, you're messing it all up again. I'm just telling you what the police department told Angela to keep an eye out for Melanie. Because mind you, this is 94. People don't have the cellular devices.
Sounds like an awful lot of bad police work is all.
Okay, well that's during the daytime, okay? Now Melanie had a church play that she would do that evening that her mother, and her children, and Prentiss were in the audience. I don't assume she invited Prentiss, but I feel like you can't ban him from all the places.
Why not?
After the play, Melanie would decide to take her children out to dinner. Now, mind you, the neighbor's still trying to keep tabs on when Melanie's coming home. And it would be later in the evening that Angela would look out the window and see Melanie's car with the driver's side door open and the lights on. Now, Angela lives with her cousin Trey Dudley, her brother James Tillman, and Carrie Tillman. So she'd ask Trey to go with her to Melanie's house because she didn't want to go over there alone, just in case there was some shit going down.
Seems valid.
Right. So James and Carrie are in the kitchen when Angela and Trey are like, hey, we're going to head over and see if Melanie's doing okay. Made it inside all right. They don't even make it off their front porch when they hear Prentiss screaming, "Bitch, I'm gonna kill you!" They hear a gunshot. Then they see Melanie running towards them screaming, "Please help me! Please help me! Call 911!" Angela runs back into her house and calls the police. Her and Melanie run to the back bedroom of Angela's house. Trey is locking the front door when Prentiss starts like banging on the front door. Prentiss, armed with an axe in his hand, I don't know if he kicks down the door, axes down the door. However he does it, he gets through the door and is standing over Trey, demanding to know where Melanie was. Now, Angela was hiding in the closet when Prentiss proceeds into Angela's house, knocks down that bedroom door in order to get to Melanie in the bedroom. Angela's freaking out at this point as Prentiss has just chopped through the bedroom door. So she jumps out the window. It didn't say if she was on the ground floor or not, so I hope for her sake it was the ground floor because she jumps straight out that window and goes running for help. Now, the door happened to land on top of Melanie. Prentiss is still armed with that axe that he used to chop down the door, grabs Melanie by her hair with one hand and pulls her into the hallway where he starts swinging the axe, hitting her in the face.
Oh, gosh.
Trey would recall seeing Prentiss raise the axe but turn to run when he started hearing the licks. Melanie would scream after the first blow, but Trey said after the second one there was no noise from Melanie, just the sounds of the chops.
Oh, that's awful.
Dude, I was horrified when I was reading this because it happens so fast that I feel like everybody in that house was just like frozen in fear and shock. Now, James and Carrie would see Prentiss come into the house, and they would also see Melanie get dragged out of the bedroom by her hair, and they'd see Prentiss swing with the axe. Now, after he was done hitting her, he stood over Melanie's body and would say, "I had to do it, Melanie. I had to do it."
Why?
Melanie would have a number of chop wounds to her face, jaw, and neck.
Ugh.
Also, one to her right hand that amputated her index finger.
Ugh.
2 chops were deep into her brain and could most definitely have caused her death. But if not for those killing her first, then the ones to the rest of her head and neck would do it. Now, regardless, it's an absolutely horrific fucking way to die.
Yeah, don't sign me up for that one either.
Now, by the time the police arrive, Prentiss is gone, so they would make their way over to where he's staying with his mother, brother, and
Oh, now they're gonna go find him.
with their mother, brother, and several of his family members. They would place the cuffs on him, and he would say, "She done me wrong." One officer would take Prentiss to jail, and the other officer would stay to talk to the family. Now, Prentiss's brother, Michael Butler, would say that Prentiss had said Melanie had done him wrong, handed him an axe, and he dropped it on the ground. Mike would show the axe to the officer, who then took it into evidence. Now, don't be surprised, but when the police talked to Prentiss, his version is a bit different.
Of course.
He would claim that he accidentally ran into Melanie at the bank after the play, and she promised to pick him up dinner and to meet with him after, the kids got tucked into bed.
Right.
I know, I was like, what? Yeah, because I think frequently people will invite their stalker to dinner.
He's an idiot.
I agree. Now, when he got to her house, he would say she put the kids to bed so they could talk, but then Melanie turned bitter and pulled a gun from her coat and backed him from her house, then shot once, but she missed. After that, he doesn't remember anything else from that night, but he takes the blame for her death. And I was like, yeah, you fucking should, because if you axe somebody to death, it's fucking your fault all day long.
Yeah, just a lot. Fucking take responsibility. Whatever. Okay.
He would say that the axe was usually something that they kept under the sink at Melanie's house, but he doesn't know where it came from, because that would look real bad if he admitted to bringing an axe to a supposed nice meeting. So Prentiss would go on trial for Melanie's murder with the defense that he was acting in a heat of passion that was in response to the aggression of Melanie when she shot at him, and his charges should be reduced to manslaughter.
Did they check her hands for gunshot residue? Did she? Do you know?
So I don't think it was disputed that she shot at him.
Okay. That's not the point of the story, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's not. And I feel like her hands were all bloodied, and you've got to keep in mind her fingers were amputated because she was trying to, like, it doesn't matter. So the issue with this case was it's not, you can't even plead defense anyway of, yeah, she shot at him. However, she also ran for her fucking life. He broke into someone else's house to pursue her. He was no longer in danger, and he'd a passion my eye.
He could have just left. And if
Right.
there's a protective order, he shouldn't have been at her house. It's not a protective order that comes and goes as you see fit.
So on October 17th, 1997, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of capital murder. However, the jurors were unable to agree on sentencing, which resulted in the judge sentencing him to life without parole. But if you ask me, he should have gotten the death penalty because he had a habit of this. It was during the commission of another felony since he was breaking and entering somebody else's house. And I don't understand for the life of me what the jury grappled with.
Well, and he brought the axe. Because if the other officer remembered thinking it was strange that he removed it, if that axe ended up back at her house, he brought it there,
Right.
which meant he put it in his vehicle. Whether she invited him over or not, he went to her house with the intention of using that axe on her.
Right.
He should be put to death.
That's what I was saying. And it was like, talk about a disgusting way to kill people. Chopped. Chopped.
Yeah, that's.
I don't want to be
Where-
chopped, bludgeoned, or poisoned.
Where were her kids?
I told you they were tucked in bed.
Ugh.
Yeah. Now, mind you, that very easily could have been she was hacked to pieces and then he went after the kids kind of scenario. But fortunately or unfortunately. And then I was also horrified by the fact that she ran to the neighbor's house. I realized they tried to lock the door and this lunatic kicked it in or chopped it in or whatever he did. He broke into the house. But there were 4 other adults. That's 5 adults versus 1.
They didn't even try.
They stood there with their thumb in their ass for as good as that was. And I realized that you don't come across all this.
She ran to 4 people who had a flight or fight, and they all ran.
Right.
She needed better neighbors.
He was wielding an axe. However, it's just like, he can't hit all of you.
It's not a gun. You're telling me none of those men were of similar size to him? I feel like one-on-one, they could have wrestled that thing long enough to help her. There's no reason. They could have.
Right. Now, I wasn't even, spoiler, I wasn't there to know.
I don't feel like that's a spoiler.
I feel like this is a case of people wanting to stay out of other people's business. So I feel like when he kicked in their front door, that Trey feller probably did the whole, hey dude, not Melanie, just was told to lock the door in order, because there's now somebody who just barged through the door with an axe. And I don't know. That's the way I feel like it went down. And then he went towards the bedroom. But that was 3 adults. They could have surprised him from behind. Grab one of those pots and thump him with it.
Anything?
You don't have anything in that kitchen? Like, let's forget defending Melanie. Maybe you're like, I don't know that chick. I'm not going to protect somebody from an axe wielder. He just broke into your house. Like, literally broke into the place. What is wrong with these people?
Yeah.
I would have me a cast iron pan and it'd be a ting. Even if you were throwing it at him.
Well, anything would have slowed him down. It would have slowed down his attack. And if anything, could have possibly either snapped him out of it and made him flee. And God, I would hope that the police would do something at that point. But to do nothing?
Yeah.
And I know this sounds awful, but I'm kind of glad she left the kids in the house and fled. Because if they would have found their mom, like if that happened in their house.
Oh, the next day.
Or like if they came out of their beds because they heard the commotion and saw him hacking their mother.
Yeah.
Ugh, those poor babies.
Now, Prentiss would go on to attempt to appeal his conviction and sentencing while maintaining that he should have gotten a max 20 years because it was a manslaughter charge.
Oh.
Which I rolled my eyes at because he killed Melanie during the commission of a burglary that is the reason he couldn't be tried for manslaughter. But that's not his version. And I'm like, there's no other way for that. You were in someone else's house. That's literally makes it capital murder. But Just so you know, they didn't take him up on any of those appeals.
Oh, poor guy. So are his appeals maxed out? He's stuck.
Yeah, but he's just a life sentence. I still say I don't understand what the jury was struggling with. Like, you've got from the time he was moved out in November, him stalking her, him still like just harassing her, and it escalated to the point of her murder. I don't understand why they couldn't all agree to put his ass to death.
I hope that her family sued the police department for those kids because they had plenty of opportunities to intervene.
It really kills me, probably poor choice of words, of like the amount of times there's so much beforehand and then people not doing anything about it. And I feel real bad for her, not only because it was a horrible way to go, but she ran to four other adults. I couldn't wrap my head around it when at first I was like, okay, I kind of get if it was she ran to another female friend and maybe they're both on the small side in comparison and they're both frozen in fear.
Then you run out the back door and keep running. He's busy rifling through the house and trying to find you, but you really went out a different door and you're playing hide and go seek someplace else.
I'm just surprised it wasn't a whole thing.
Listen here, guys. If you have neighbors, don't hide in a closet.
No.
Your best bet is to run and flee and make as
Go out
much.
the window,
Yeah,
keep going.
you just don't stop.
But that one messed with me a lot. I know it wasn't a long one, but it's just like, I really feel bad for her. Everyone in her life knew she was in fear of him.
That's really sad. I feel sorry for her and her kids.
Well, I still can't wrap my head around it. And she was, not to say it would be lessened if she were a crackhead, but she was a nice lady. All the things that I would find where she was in the Vicksburg, like the local paper, like she was on volunteer things, she was in the church choir, she did the plays, like she, I mean, she was doing the very best she could to be a good person and be on the right path. And she tried to do things the way she's supposed to with going to the police. But where was her protection?
Yeah.
Like, she was even on this committee, not again that it matters, but like she was living in public housing. This is where it all transpired. And she was on a committee that they had just like started up because they were going to make it possible for people to rent to own their public housing, which was I thought was cool. So they opted, since she had lived there, because they picked a panel of different people to make that council. And since she was a resident that had been there during whatever time frame that they were looking at, that she was excited to do that. So they had interviews in the paper because they were trying to make this program so that people could work towards owning their own home.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I thought that was cool that she wanted to participate in that. So it's just like,
she had things going for her. She tried to be good.
right.
Not to victim shame, because that's not my intentions, but man, it's because she stuck around for all those beatings. It shocked him that she finally put her foot down.
Yeah. But it makes me sad because then it's also, what do you tell people who are victims of domestic abuse? Because shoot, what are they supposed to do?
Get out.
Well, she did.
Get out sooner.
She's born and raised there. What is she? But then when they won't take no for an answer,
shoot again.
Like, I hate to quote a movie because we do this an awful lot, and it almost needs to be a tagline in our podcast description. But it reminds me of that movie with Jennifer Lopez, Enough, of when she goes to a police department to ask for advice, and the police officer's like, well, it sounds like your friend needs to get a protective order. And she's like, and what is she supposed to do? Throw the paper at him when he comes around? And the guy's like, she calls us. Okay. And then those few minutes, like this night happened quickly. Realistically, what are they supposed to do if all the little things aren't enough to toss him in jail?
Why did she only shoot once? I wonder.
Probably because he wielded the axe. I don't know. Because she realized that made him. Maybe she fired thinking it would scare him and he would leave. And then when she fired and he did get real angry real fast, maybe he turned a shade of green. I don't know.
Well, then she shouldn't have had the gun, because I feel like if you own a gun, you better be mentally prepared to have to pull that trigger at him.
Well, she
with
did.
The intention of killing the person or severely injuring them to protect yourself and her kids.
Yeah, I wish she would have emptied it at him.
Same. Wow.
Which brings me back to, what the hell was wrong with the jury? And I know I haven't served on a jury that could have chose a sentence for a capital crime. And I've just heard where people are like, it's harder when it's on your doorstep to make that decision. I would feel like I'd be fine.
So
I could make that call.
my brain hole is you might have already said this. Don't yell at me. But was he ever
I promise nothing.
was he ever arrested for domestic violence? Or was it always just the piddly stuff?
Piddly.
So maybe
Assault and nonsense.
Well, maybe the jury was unable to hear about the abusive behavior because there wasn't a record of it. It was just a record of petty crimes, not domestic violence. And maybe that's what made it to where somebody was like, okay, so I can see where this might have been in the heat of passion, even though that's stupid.
I'm gonna say, breaking into somebody's house and axing them to death, you deserve to die.
But at that point, he's already lost his shit, and he's in the throes of having the reaction, right or wrong.
Consequences is what I say. Consequences. Fuck around to find out.
I agree.
And he should be dead.
I'm just trying to figure out, I wish at her hand.
Or I hope he has a lifelong mishap of wandering into the car wash section of the prison and his butthole is routinely dirtied by all the inmates.
That deserves a moment of silence.
For his asshole? I don't believe it does.
For prayer for it to happen. We're going to will it into existence. Ooh, what was that?
My stomach. I was hoping you didn't hear that.
Oh my God.
That's all.
I think I might leave that in there. Go feed yourself. Good God. Oh my God. Your stomach agreed.
That's real hungry.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.